And for those who don't know me, my name's Marcus Ross and I'm going to MC this afternoon's event, so bear with me. Everything else will run smoothly, but I may be a bit creaky. So the format for today is Craig's going to say a few words of introduction, and then Donna is going to explain some of the formal elements of the process that we're about to engage in as a university for the very first time. Before you hear from our candidates today, we'll each speak for 5 minutes, and then we'll have some questions. So start getting your questions hat on. I do have some pre-submitted questions that I will use to stimulate thinking and discussion if necessary. We'll use one of those at the outset, but start thinking about questions you may wish to ask of the candidates after they have spoken as well. Other points of order, just so you're aware, the session is being streamed to other campuses, and the session will be recorded and be made available on the court website after the event as well. So if you wish, you can go back and look over the events of today, or colleagues who haven't been able to make it along in person will have that opportunity as well. But Craig.
I'd like to welcome staff, students and members of our court here today at the first of these processes that this university has ever been through, and the opening of the election of our next Chair of Court. I'd like to particularly welcome the two candidates who are seated in front of you here, or on video if you're elsewhere, Kate Allen and Andrew Gordon, to the meeting. Thank you very much for making yourself available, willing and part of this process. The session, as Marcus said, will be about 45 minutes long. During that time, each candidate will address the audience, outlining what they bring as to the role of Chair of Court, and that will then be followed by a question and answer session facilitated again by our excellent MC in the form of Marcus Ross. But before we get to that presentation by each of the candidates, Donna McMillan, the University Secretary, will give a brief overview of the role of the University Court and the summary of the appointment process.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along. It's the first time that we've done this. I think we're the fourth university in the Scottish sector to have its election for the Chair of Court, and it's appropriate, I think, I just make sure everybody's really clear on what we're doing in terms of the election and the process. So I know there are members of the court in the room, and I know there are many of you who are very familiar with the work of the court, so forgive me, I'm just going to explain a little bit about the work of the court in case anybody's either here or is going to look at the video and would like to know a bit more about it. And you can get all of this on our website as well. So the University Court is the governing body of the university, and it has wide-ranging powers, particularly around the setting of strategic direction and ensuring that the university is properly run and functioning effectively, and execution of the financial powers and spend for the responsibilities of the university. The court's made up of a mixture of people who either come from outside of the organisation, but also staff and students, some of whom are elected, some of whom have ex officio posts on the court. We've currently got 20 members of the court, and we run within a constitution that's approved through an order of council, actually, as a piece of secondary legislation. So Dr. Wai-Yin Hatton, who many of you will know and will have seen at other events, she's our current chair of the court. She's been a member of the court for almost 9 years and coming to the end of the potential of her membership of the court. And so we find ourselves facing a vacancy, and when a vacancy arises under the new legislation of the HE Governance Act, we must have an election for that post, and that's something that's new for the Scottish sector. It's not the same in the rest of the UK, so it's something specific to the Scottish sector now. And as I say, I think we're the fourth university in Scotland to be going through this process, but all the universities and HEIs in Scotland will be going through this process over the next few years. So the appointment process is made up of 3 different stages, and we find ourselves at the 3rd stage. So people were invited to apply for the role. They were then selected whether they could be interviewed, and following the interview process, which was led by the Governance and Nominations Committee, and that has members of the staff community, student community and court community. And that committee met and looked at the applications, interviewed candidates, and from that process we find ourselves with 2 applicants here who have been deemed suitable to go forward for the election stage. And we've been following all the requirements of the Act as we've gone through that. So this open meeting is part of our election arrangements. We've published those arrangements in the rules for this election, and you've had a look at those, or you can find them again on the website. So we now find ourselves at the election stage, so you'll be interested perhaps to know a bit more about that. So all members of court, all students and all staff are entitled to vote in the election, and the definitions for those roles are all identified again in our rules. The election itself is being managed by Civica Election Services, and Civica is the new name for the Electoral Reform Society, which might be a term you're more familiar with. And all eligible voters will shortly receive an email which will give you an electronic voting link. So that's how the voting will happen. It's all electronic. And this email will allow everybody to have an individual access to one vote. We've already taken into account that there are some staff who might be registered as students as well. We've taken account of all of that, so you will have one opportunity to vote if you find yourself in that position. Separate arrangements are in place for anybody who does not have immediate access to email in their working day-to-day life, and we have issued arrangements to those colleagues to ensure that they, again, have the opportunity to access the voting platform. It's a very simple first-past-the-post result, and that again is laid out in the Act, and the winner of the election will therefore be appointed as the chair of the court. So in addition to this open meeting where you have a chance to hear from the candidates, there are candidate statements again that have been published on the website, and you can have a look at those. You can also there find the rules for the election, and if you have any questions, obviously we can deal with those separately. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Donna. Thanks, Craig, as well for your words at the start. So now, colleagues, it's what you probably want to hear the most from our candidates. So in the, I guess, in the form of the sporting arena that we're all familiar with, we did a toss of the coin earlier on. I am sponsored by Specsavers, in case you're wondering. And the result of that meant that Andrew will speak first. I'm delighted to introduce Andrew Gordon and Kate Allen once more. And Andrew will speak to us first for 5 minutes, and then Kate will speak thereafter, and then we'll get into the question time. Over to you, Andrew.
Well, first of all, Andrew has to make his microphone work. Have I passed that test? Good. Unusual. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the time to come here to Paisley, or if you're looking at us through the web, which not many people are, coming to wherever you are. I see this afternoon as primarily a chance for you to ask questions of us rather than for you to just hear what we might want to say. So I'll try and be brief, which some of you know is usually a struggle for me. In my election statement, I've tried to explain why I accepted the suggestion that I should stand for this position. I've served on court for almost 6 years now, and when I originally applied to serve on court, I was interviewed by the then chair of court and the now principal, and they both pointed out to me in a slightly roundabout way that this university was very unlike the university that I attended, and I responded by saying that was kind of the point. UWS is this country's most inclusive university. That's come about partly by accident, where we're located and the nature of the institutions that came together to make up UWS, but it's also through a conscious effort over the last few years, efforts like encouraging articulation from the FE sector and improving the success rate of our students once they've come to us. We dare to be different. When government yet again failed to fund a new Lanarkshire campus for us, we dared to go alone and procure one, and that's won awards. When the opportunity came up to create a London campus, we seized that opportunity. I'm still surprised and really quite proud that my executive colleagues actually managed to do it quite as quickly as they did, and I think that says a lot about them and about this university. And if all goes well, we'll move from our existing suboptimal premises in London to our fine new London home later this year. Brexit and lack of funding makes this a really challenging time for universities, and it makes it a particularly challenging time for universities like UWS. And that's because we're particularly dependent upon government money. That money is in short supply now, and I reckon it's going to remain in short supply for the foreseeable future. And that means that UWS and its court are going to have to make some really difficult choices, and we've already had to make some. I hope we can do that in a collegiate manner and build on a broad consensus, which we've managed to do over the past 1 or 2 particularly difficult years. So what's changing? Well, as Don has explained, the next chair will be the first chair to be elected by students and by staff. That's a change. However, I don't think the role of the chair of court changes at all. Election of the chair doesn't give the chair a special mandate, in my view. It will remain for court as a collective representative body to determine strategy in concert with the executive management team. The other change is that for the first time, the chair will be offered remuneration. I fully support that move. It opens up the role to a much more diverse range of potential candidates, regardless of their financial position. However, as far as I'm concerned, I'm semi-retired now. Taking up this role would cost me time, it wouldn't cost me any money, I wouldn't lose any income. So, if I'm elected, in consultation with court colleagues, I would ask for the remuneration that would have gone to me as chair instead to go to support student activities. And I do that in consultation with court colleagues, including the source representatives. And something close to my heart that I'd like at least people to think about is whether that money should go to support the first UWS production of the Edinburgh Fringe. Anyway, that's enough for me for now. I look forward to your questions.
Clearly my background is a little bit different, so I wanted to take the opportunity to give you a bit of an insight about what I do and what are the drivers that make me interested in taking up this position. So I've had a wide and varied career, and I'm currently a non-executive director of 4 listed companies, and having previously been the chief executive of 2 companies, my overview of the commercial world is pretty far-reaching. The opportunity here is of great interest to me because as I look into my portfolio career and the commercial side, I want to take the opportunity to extend into organisations that, in my view, sustain our collective future. Sustainability and the ESG agenda should be at the heart of every organisation, because the issues that we face on a social, cultural, environmental and economic basis will only be resolved by the next generation. They will not be resolved by the generation of today. So to be able to influence that generation to develop, learn and lead is an opportunity that I really relish. And I've enjoyed every minute of my career. It's given me massive opportunities and challenges, but nevertheless I've enjoyed it all. But it's all been predicated on my own education and the platform that gave me to succeed. So again, to be able to build a platform for others to develop into that role and have those same opportunities is something that I would really welcome the opportunity to do. I've been recruiting graduates into the commercial world for over 30 years, which in itself is slightly concerning, but anyway, it is a fact. And I've watched that process evolve over that time period, and for the most part, I would say it has not improved. And I think that transition from student to employee is a significant one. Getting that platform right and allowing graduates to come through into the commercial world and understand that it's not just about technical skills, it's about management and leadership skills and making sure that process works effectively. Because leadership skills do matter. My leadership skills are widely recognised and they're based on engagement and integrity. I absolutely believe it is important to be able to engage with people at every level of an organisation, to get their input, their ideas, to bring them together to make sure that the outcomes that we come to together are robust. And that means a lot of listening, it means a lot of time, but nevertheless, that strength of output is critical. And I think, again, when I look at the role of leadership in creating environments, the environment that people operate is really important. Because actually people's well-being, their ability to succeed is dependent on the environment in which they operate. So it's really important that the culture of an organisation is consistent, that it's positive, and it allows people to thrive and be the best they can be, not just as individuals, but as a collective. And the staff and the students are the lifeblood of the organisation and of the university. So if we don't get that environment right, we're only damaging ourselves. I think in addition, the positive image of the university is key. So throughout my career, lobbying, media management, public relations have all been at the heart of what I do. And I think when I look at the university's need to sustain itself, that positive image is absolutely critical to attract and retain staff and students and to attract financial contribution and investment. I've also worked with a range of universities on research projects. And that's been through a number of different businesses, and that is a process that is accelerating, driven by need. Business today is struggling to reinvent itself at a pace fast enough to keep up with the speed of change that's required. So as that moves forward, I'm seeing more and more businesses turn to academia for funded projects to allow them the research and development expertise that they need. And one of the companies that I'm working with today, actually we have a multi-million-pound research project going on, and it's all about how this business digitalises and revolutionises its offering. And I think those relationships between business and universities can only be a win-win situation for both parties. So whilst I'm an expert in what can be the slightly dry area of corporate governance, I do also understand how organisations work from a strategic point of view, from a commercial point of view, and I know my way around every part of the finances. And I think you can see that can facilitate discussion and to get decision making at the right level for the right benefits moving forward. And when I look at the performance of the businesses that I currently engage with as a non-exec and previously as a CEO, their performance is self-explanatory. But lastly, my track record might demonstrate my success, but it's all underpinned by integrity. Everything that I do is underpinned by my belief of the integrity of my actions and my aspirations. And it's absolutely that integrity and passion that I want to bring to bear at UWS, because I think it is such a key part of our development and sustainability for the future. And I want to give people the opportunity to be the best that they can be. Thank you very much.
So what we're going to do now is I've got one question I'm going to kick off with that was pre-submitted, just in terms of housekeeping so you understand what's happening. When someone asks a question from the floor, I will repeat it. That means that we're caught on this mic, which means it should be caught on the recording that we're doing, so it's not because I think colleagues don't understand the question, it's merely a technical aspect in terms of getting that question recorded so when we get into playback. And what I'll do is I will alternate the order in which I ask the candidates to respond to the question. Both candidates will reply to each question. I hope it says looking at both. The first question then that's been pre-submitted is around the multi-campus nature of the organisation, and it says UWS is a multi-campus institution. What do you see as the main challenges are of this multi-campus structure, and how can COURT engage with all the campuses? And I'll invite Andrew to respond first of all.
We are. Our campuses are very different. They each have different challenges. London, great things are happening. Actually, London helps the other campuses. London is a surplus creating campus. It's difficult to choose between them. It's like choosing between your family. We are our campuses, and we're not closing any of them. The question is how we make them work as well as we can. Dumfries, I suppose, is the most challenging because of its size and because of its geography. The main challenge there is to get the Scottish Government to realise what we're doing there and give us the money that we deserve for it. I think generally there's an issue we need to accept that for many of our students, the reason they came to UWS in the first place is because we're their nearest university. So it's that geographic reach. That's why a lot of our students come to us. The challenge, I think, is to then encourage students to then think of all the campuses as places they might end up studying. And the ultimate challenge for me is for the many of our students who haven't been outside Scotland, is for them to visit the London campus. We talk about Erasmus, and that's great, and going to Europe would be fine, and going to North America would be great, but visiting London for many of our students would be a really good start. So there are challenges there, but it's also our strength. There are diseconomies there, and that's something we have to overcome.
I've worked in quite a few multi-sited organisations, and it brings benefits and challenges. So I think one of the things that you need to work really hard at when you've got multi-sites is that each of those sites feels that they have a valued role within the organisation, that the communication is there, so that the consistency of culture is there, and each and every one of them can bring their differences to bear. And the advantage of the multi-site is exactly that. There are differences as well as consistencies. So you have to make sure that you can still bring the consistency, you can still get the synergies of size, but you still have to make sure that everybody feels valued, and that you can also celebrate the differences that those multi-sites bring.
Thank you. So, colleagues, I have other questions here. Dan, over to you.
As you can probably see, there's barely any students in this room. How will you stimulate students' interest in the work of COURT?
So the question, if perhaps the recording is, there are a limited number of students in the room just now, so how would you stimulate the interest of students in engagement with COURT? And about you firstly.
I think, again, a lot of this comes down to communication and making sure that there is real active two-way engagement. I can see it both ways, that, again, having been a student many years ago myself, yes, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I think as time has gone on, we need to be building a much better understanding within a student population of the importance of their education, their importance to be able to influence and recognise that participating in these processes makes a difference. But that comes back to a real clarity of communication and making sure you've got your advocates and your messages going across the piece.
It's a difficult one. I think we need to ask, we have SOAR's representatives on COURT. Constitutionally, COURT should really talk to the student body through its elected representatives. And so that's a very important point. We struggle as COURT to engage with students in the same way as SOAR struggles to, your electorate struggles to engage with you. We will have a low turnout on this election. We'll have a lower turnout, I suspect, than SOAR's elections, but it's really difficult to engage with students. And I don't think that's just a COURT problem. I think that's a problem we all have. I think it's more difficult in a modern university. If you go back 30 years, students turned up on campus pretty much every day. We'd like to think they turned up to go to lectures, but speaking of myself, it's because I didn't have a mobile phone, and that's where my friends were. But you were there. So we lack, we never get together in one room. It's a difficult one. So I just think every medium that's open to us, we have to follow it. We do stuff on the net already. In the day, there are student newspapers. All those things have been tried, and we'll continue to plug away at it, but it's a really difficult problem. And it's one that if SOAR has any answers to, I think the COURT will embrace it like very energetically. But I don't have a magic answer for you, other than to say it's really difficult, and we know that by looking around the room.
Another question here from Stuart.
Yeah, I am a student, well, currently at this point in time. I've been a student here for a number of years, 15 years to be exact, and doing various things. I'm glad that the students are going to get a chance to vote in this election, but I'm severely concerned that not a lot of students are going to get to know what they're voting for, or maybe they know what they're voting for in the email when it explains what it's for, but as you both alluded to, the low turnout, if there was a way that I could help personally initially help push that in any way forward, just as a general point, I'm willing to do that, because I think this is an opportunity, as Donna said, as Craig said, this is the first time that students are going to actually be able to help engage in an election with a COURT member, especially the chair of COURT, and I think that is going to be important if you can try and get the words out here, split the resistance between somebody as a high figure from management level to bring them in, to making them understand what they're going to vote for. So if there's a way that any other students could help facilitate when the vote comes out in a couple of days, whenever that may be, to help spread the word, then I'm willing to help in any way possible to help that. Bring the vote up any way I can, try to put it out there to people when I'm out about.
Thanks, Stuart. I think that's just more of a statement there, just Stuart making the point that you're concerned that not many will engage, but offering help, which I'm sure we'll take you up on. Take a note of it, so you're in. Linda.
If you had to choose between UWS either attracting more international students or generating innovative commercial activity, what would you see as the priority?
So the question is, if you had to choose between UWS attracting more international students or having innovative commercial activity, what would your choice be? And we'll go to Andrew first on that.
Without seeming to duck the question, I'm going to duck the question. I don't see it as a choice. I can't see why you only do one and not the other. I can't see why one would ever preclude the other. In many ways, they both support each other. So I don't see why it's a choice. if you can explain to me why it's a choice, then I might be forced to make it. But I genuinely don't see why it's a choice. I would pursue both of them.
The question was really designed to see whether or not you had a preference of one over the other. Not saying that they would one other than the other, but just to see which you would
I don't see. It's a bit like about 3 or 4 years ago, a colleague addressed court on improving retention, so reducing dropout students, and it was a really good study that was presented to us, and I can't remember how many ideas were floated, which we either dreamed up or stolen from our universities, but there were about 8 or 12. And the conclusion was, and there's a lot of discussion, should we have pilot projects and all the rest of it, and eventually the presenter said, we have no evidence to suggest that any of these things could possibly do any harm, let's do them all, and that's what we did. So I would do them both. And I think, occasionally you have to rank, our priorities will be, if we don't have enough money, then what do you not spend your money on? That's the real choice. I don't think it's on emphasis like you outlined. Which is not to say I can't make choices, I just don't think I have to make a choice in that respect.
Okay.
At the risk of repeating, I don't think it is a choice, but I do think you can take it to another level. And one of the things that I would want to question and challenge is have we really used the international business network to get both international commercial projects and international students? Because the issues are talked about in terms of that transition of employees, the need of business to bring graduates through, because there is such a shortage of high calibre individuals coming through into business now. And it's not just a UK issue, that's a European issue, and actually increasingly it's becoming an issue in Asia as well. So if we can utilise the international business community for both commercial opportunity and to bring more international students, it's an opportunity not to be missed.
Hi. With the corporate strategy coming out in February, say controversial decisions needed to be made by the court, how would you steer court to make that direction, and what would you prioritise?
So the question is, if with the corporate strategy coming out in February, and if there were some controversial decisions to be made, how would you steer the court in taking those decisions? And Kate, you have the pleasure of first answer.
Firstly, I think it's best that I've never shied away from making controversial decisions if I believe they're the right decisions for the long-term future of any organisation that I work with. And I think in terms of doing that, if you're making controversial decisions, the most important thing again is to engage and communicate to build the understanding. For the most part, people do understand why the decisions are important and what the long-term benefit is. People will go with that. It's when people don't understand that it's a problem. So if in terms of sustaining the long-term success of the university, there are some difficult decisions to be made, those decisions need to be made, but they need to be extremely well communicated and explained.
I would be surprised if the refreshed corporate strategy, by the time it comes to February, is going to be very different from the drafting that's around now. And that's been around this organisation for a little while. So it would be very surprising if something particularly controversial popped up at the last minute, because it would be very much at the last minute. So that corporate strategy isn't something that Marcus and his team dreamed up in a drug-induced haze. If it was, they covered it up really well. It's not something that the court has imposed. It's what is. If you wanted to talk about corporate strategy at any point in the last 6 years, you'd have been deluged by people who were desperate to talk to you. The struggle was to get people to engage in that process, and that always is. And so the struggle this time around is to say to people, who say, well, didn't we just have this? And said, well, actually, it's now several years old. So I don't think anything controversial is going to come out of that process. The things that will surprise us are the things that we're not expecting. We should be expecting our own corporate strategy. So the surprises have been Brexit. The surprises have been all the things that we didn't think were going to be like they were. And some of the surprises have been good ones. Surprises like London, which is a surprise, if we should be honest enough to admit it.
Carl.
on the back of that, are we missing anything in our corporate strategy? And what would be your priority in leading that?
The question is, are we missing anything in our corporate strategy, and what would your priority be in addressing that?
If we were, it would be my fault, because I've had a chance to comment on it as much as ever, and it would be yours as well, because you too have had a chance, and everybody else here. The only person who's got a get out of jail card is Kate. Although she was really keen, she'd have written it. I think we can get, for me, the process of the corporate strategy is almost more important than the strategy itself. It's that talking to ourselves and trying to get a sense of common direction that's more important almost than the direction itself. This has been a difficult 1.5 years with the rebalancing exercise. And it's the least difficult is for lay members of court in some ways, because we're actually detached from it. We supervise that process, but it's not our jobs. So we recognise the difficulties that have been in that. It is astonishing, I think, that those difficult decisions have been made, and it's individual decisions about individual staff members. Those, I think, are the really difficult decisions rather than the grand strategic ones. And I think it's astonishing that this institution has managed to make the changes it has made in the last year or so with as reduced pain as we have, and I think that's testimony, frankly, to executive colleagues, not to court, and the way that process has been managed. So, no magic bullet, nothing I can add to it, and I have to reiterate upon that. I don't see it as the chair's job to set a strategy. I see it as the chair's job. Do I have views? I think I have views. My struggle is to put those views to one side, to bring them up when it's appropriate, but mainly to seek the views of others and come to an institutional conclusion. On the topic of the corporate strategy, almost all the discussion is about nuance. It's not about, and it's about whether it's going to work. So, do we know how successful international expansion is going to be? No, we don't. Is it difficult? Yes, it is. Really difficult, particularly difficult for universities like ours. Have we done well considering? Yeah, I think we have. But even there, the areas, if you'd been asked to predict where would be successful, where would be less successful, we'd have probably got that wrong 2 years ago as well. So expect the unexpected. But strategize it.
Okay.
So, I think, can't say that I can bring a lot of expertise to it at the moment, but over the course of the last 4 years, I have worked with companies across 6 different sectors, 5 of which were new to me. And what I have learned from that is I haven't walked into any of those businesses and changed the direction of the strategy. But what I have been able to do is come in and ask questions and just then reiterate the process to make sure that we've, again, really thought it through, not missed anything, and if that needs a little bit of reshaping or an opportunity so that we haven't recognised, then we can evolve and build on that.
Thank you. Caroline, first, and then I'll come.
If you were successful, what would you like to see achieved in the first year, let's say, your tenure?
Kate, that's a good question. Was if you're successful, what would you like to see achieved in the first year of your tenure?
I think in the first year, bearing in mind the conversation that's been had, is to have that process of really understanding that the corporate strategy is workable, achievable and deliberate. I think that some of those other things that we've talked about, and again, for me a lot of that will be learning the sector, which I'll be able to do very quickly, but making sure that as we build forwards, that again, we're taking into perspective the wider view of how the education sector as a whole fits together, because our challenge is right across the piece. And I would like to be able to come out of the first year feeling that the university has moved forwards. That's the most important thing. There is no room, I don't believe, in this world for any organisation to stand still. That moving forward with the motivation to create that momentum is important.
I'm really conscious that a year will be on us in a flash. I'm staggered that I've been on the court for almost 6 years. It doesn't really seem that long, or some meetings did, but so a year is not a long time. Realistically, if we see the corporate strategy refresh, if it's what we expect, it's just a refresh. So it's really continuing to make the incremental improvements we have. Colleagues on court will know that I've previously said, I think the one thing I would like to change is I I think we, as an institution, if we looked around within us, we'd find, if we could say these are the 4 or 5 most important messages that we want to broadcast to the world, who do we want to target in the world? Who in our community knows them best? And let's send them off with their script and their targets and ask what they come back within 12 months. That's actually quite a big process to do, but I'd like to have a bash at it.
May I ask separate questions in response to the presentation that we gave? Would that be acceptable?
I think that's acceptable. Looking to legal or nodding.
Shall we answer each other? I'll
Yeah,
answer
can
you
we
if you can answer
Can we
mine.
choose which one we want to answer?
Customised questions. My name is Claire Flynn. I'm the School Business Manager for Computing Engineering and Physical Sciences. Good afternoon. Andrew, if I may, you spoke about the practices and profile of inclusivity university and the pride that we have in that. And I wondered, whilst that's a key identifier for us in the sector and borders and beyond, I wondered if there were other aspects where you perceive we do lead, or we could and should lead, so that we become the one to watch and we stand out in the crowd.
I'm just going to repeat the question again. So the question was around our practice of inclusivity, and pride in being lead in that, but whilst it's a key identifier, whether there are other aspects of EWS work which could now or could in the future make us stand out from the crowd.
Inclusivity is a difficult one because it's not an excuse. I think we have a discussion to be had with the Scottish Government about whether the fact that we align better than any other university with their priorities, and yet they don't seem to reward it. And there'll be others who are really good at what we do, might well agree with us, that there are issues there about whether we break ranks with fellow higher education institutions, because I don't think that cake's going to grow. So are we going to steal a bit of other people's cake? Difficult choice. And you have to be careful that inclusivity is not seen as an excuse. And say, oh yeah, you can't. So occasionally I get irritated when people say, and we do a comparison, and they pick up a bunch of universities, and I'll say, well, why them? Oh, well, because they're all the new universities, or all the this universities. In other words, they're less challenging targets. So that's why we have to measure ourselves against the best. We are better than all universities in inclusion. I think we're probably better than any other Scottish university at running a proper multi-site. I don't mean to offend, but I will now. And no one from UHI is here, so I won't. But I think we're better at it. I think that there are real challenges in doing that. I think the way that London was rolled out, to do that in under a year is nothing short of astonishing. And I'll be very honest, when that plan came up, and there was do it in 8 months, do it in a year and 8 months, and I said, I can't see you can do it in 8 months, but if you can, that's fine, but we'll be planning for a year and 8 months. I was wrong. So I think we're good at being us. And I don't, yes, we should measure ourselves against others, and we should measure ourselves against the best, but we shouldn't be afraid to do things differently. Nor should we use our difficulties as an excuse. We should simply be holding a mirror up to people and saying, you said you liked this, we do it, why aren't you helping?
So picking up on what you said about best, then do you agree that we should be looking for aspects of best so that we can become part of that community of best?
Yeah, but we are part of the community of best. In quite a few of our subjects, we do better than anyone else. It's a well-kept secret in some parts of the world because people keep going on about ancient universities being this and being that. We are simply the best at a number of things we do, and we're pretty bloody good at a lot of the rest of them as well. We should also be brave enough to say when we're not doing something particularly well, and pick that up and say, well, can we fix it? But if we can't fix it, we should stop doing it. That's a challenge. And the other challenge for us, which partly goes back to the multi-site thing, is that historically, we have tended to do an awful lot of everything we do everywhere. Now, we changed that as soon as we moved to Dumfries, and we changed that even more in London. And I think there's an open question, which is to what extent you consolidate more, should individual sites specialise even more? Can we have foundation courses in more spread out, have people feed in? Can we encourage students to swap more between campuses? Those are things that we can look at, but you need to bring people with you as you do that.
Your second question, you said I'm conscious of time, so we're going to wrap up fairly soon with the others.
You spoke about engagement and integrity and culture and the triangulation of it, and the importance of supporting cultural shift in culture. And I wondered if you were aware of any aspects of our culture as a university that you would deem to be points of pride. So the work culture that is evolving, we have, and you deem to be proud points to grow.
The question is one of university culture, whether Kate's aware of any aspects of university culture that could be points of pride for UWS.
I don't know the culture well enough yet to be able to comment on that. The one thing that I would say is, I have done quite a lot of research and there are a lot of positives that I see, and that does come through from the external research that I've done. Having said that, I always think that a culture of an organisation is a very precious thing and it needs looking after every day. So whilst there might be some break points in the culture, it's really important to make sure it sustains and it is treated with respect, because it generates so much in terms of the positivity of the organisation.
Yes.
One of you is going to be appointed to, other than Vice Chancellor, one of the most important roles in university. And there is a clear understanding that you've done your homework, you've gone through a lot of processes of appointment interviews. So both of you are coming from a corporate background, which is different to university. I'm going to ask you a corporate question. Somebody walks through that door and offers position to every member of the staff in university equal or better, and offers every student in this university a position equal or better, and wants to buy UWS, and a week after the purchase completely wipes it off the map. Will you sell it?
I'll try and summarise that. So it's a corporate question. So, a benefactor walks through the door and offers students and colleagues something which is equal or better, and in essence buys UWS, and then a week later the plan would be to wipe it off the map. Would you sell it? And Kate, that comes to you.
The answer, either yes or no, is why.
That's a cool one. Coming from my corporate background, what I would look to if somebody did come in that, and it was that sort of transaction, the first thing you're going to go through is your due diligence. And if going through that due diligence puts in place a trajectory that actually wipes the university out with no reason, benefit or understanding, then no, you wouldn't. And the due diligence, if you're selling a business, buying a business, closing a business or opening a business, your due diligence is key, and the due diligence should answer the question of what's the long-term perspective here, and is that a gain or is that a disadvantage? And you make a decision on what's the best long-term gain for the organisation.
I've had the benefit of being able to think about the market. Within moments, Donna would point out that we're a charity and I wasn't allowed to sell it. And so I'd be frustrated in selling it if you never wanted to. I think in real life, what might happen is that you'd be approached for a merger, which is the equivalent of a takeover, and a merger where you don't know the results. So if let's take a blue sky example. If an ancient university thought that finally you really did have to be inclusive, a really easy one would be merge with UWS, and in a shot, they've come up by 50%. They become acceptable as opposed to being pathetic. Would they then keep all our campuses open? Possibly not. Although I wish them luck if they try and close them. In real life, if any Scottish university struggles, then they will be steered into the tender embrace of a more successful university. What we have to be sure of is that if a Scottish university struggles, it's not us, and it'll be us doing the embracing.
So yes, I've let us run well beyond time already, sorry colleagues, and I know there are other questions, but I think
Having such fun.
I'm going to maybe appropriately give the last question to the President of our Students' Association, Franklin Jacob. I know there are other questions, and I apologise colleagues, but I think we're due to finish at 22. I'm looking to the event organisers at the back, or can they run on? No, I was. So we'll take one more from Franklin, and then we'll wind up proceedings, unless someone feels they have a real burning issue, in which case start waving at them frenetically during Franklin's question.
Hi, Andrew and Kate. As President, wishing you all the best. But since we mentioned so much about inclusivity and equality and all those words today, in your perspective, what does inclusivity and diversity look in an institutional setting or context at UWS? So give us a picture of what it means to you for UWS.
The question is what the inclusivity and equality are, what does that look like in an institutional setting at UWS? And Andrew, that's over to you first.
It's looking around UWS. It is what UWS is. Could we do better? I'm sure we could. But as a CORT member, I cannot think of being involved in any institution where we've talked more openly about issues relating to inclusivity than the discussions I've been involved in here. So an inclusive UWS to me looks like UWS looks, because I believe we are inclusive. That doesn't mean we couldn't do better. Have I got a bright plan for how we could be more inclusive? No, I haven't. If I had, I should have put it forward.
I'm switched off. Sorry, that's because I kept talking and picked up. As far as UWS is concerned, again, I haven't been close enough to pass comment on it, but I think in general terms, and again, coming from my background, all of those aspects of inclusivity, diversity, taking the benefit of what those things bring, actually you can see the benefit of that in a number of organisations, because for the most part, the more inclusive organisations are and the more diverse the organisations are, the better they perform.
Thank you. So everyone, thanks everyone for coming. I think we are blessed today to have two exceptional candidates for whom we will be voting on the coming days. I'll speak about that in a second, but I ask you again just to show your appreciation for the interactive sessions.